G'day, Chris. Oh, sorry. Chris, Brook, Vee Two Australia, Project 860. I don't know, is this episode 5 or 6?
6.
6?
Episode
Right.
6, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Last episode we split the cases and it's really now, okay, what do we do next?
Well, I want to go through several things that these engines are notorious for giving trouble with, I guess.
Okay.
And I've developed some cures for them over the years.
Yep.
Through racing and go on.
Can I just butt in?
But yeah,
No,
I'm going to anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to anyway. But it's raining.
Unbelievable.
It's raining, so you might have to talk up a little bit. Sorry about that, people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is raining. It does rain and then up a fair bit, which is not a bad thing.
Yes. Sorry, go.
So, yeah, I will. Yeah. So, there are some design faults in here that, in actual fact, the guy that designed the engine or drew it up didn't do. He drew it a particular way, and they weren't manufactured in the factory that way because of the beam counters, cutting costs.
Okay.
And that has caused some issues, but I only know about that because I was fortunate enough to go there and he showed me. He showed me the drawings and
You met Dr. T?
yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did you think of him?
He was pretty old and whatever, but he was really interested in proving to me that, in actual fact, what I was telling him, he already knew about, and he'd already drawn it like that in the first place. It wasn't that it was. He made a point, I guess, that it wasn't a design fault by the guys that did the engine. I mean, he had a lot to do with it. He was the designer, but he had people working under him, and of course, he had a team. And they had put this, they had fixed these things or designed them into the manufacture of it, and the factory just said, no, that's too hard. That's another machining operation that we don't need, and they didn't do it. So
Okay.
And look, it happens all the time. I'm sure it still happens these days, but,
Yep.
but maybe not as bad. But you'll see, and it's pretty simple. So anyway, so we split the engine. We took the crankcase half off, and I think that's where we left it.
Yep.
And we'll pull the gearbox and the crank and the other bits out, and we'll go through these things, and there you go. So the crank we're going to leave sort of till later. That all the gears and everything are off here, so this will just come straight out like so. That's literally how they come out. That's this main bearing has stayed on the crankshaft, which is not uncommon. We'll talk about that. That means that the actual bearing is spinning in the crankcase and it's loose in here, which is common. And again, we fixed that. We've got a cure for that. So it's looser on the outside than it is on the inside, and that's why that one has come out of there, which it shouldn't. And this one has just slid off the crank because hopefully that one might be loose in the crankcase, but we'll probably end up changing the sleeve anyway. Anyway, we'll get to that. We'll press that apart later. So the gearbox. This has been a bit. This has been apart before, and whoever put it together wasn't up to speed with all the little things that need to be done. If you look here, this is a real problem area with them, and this groove here in the Kickstart shaft has a circlip on it, which gets damaged when you don't load the Kickstart pawl when you split the crank cases. So this thing here, this bit here, goes behind that plate, which I think we did talk about.
Yeah, I think we should.
And if you try and yank the cover off without this being in the right position, which is around there, it'll try and rip all this off and break that spline, which is what's happened. And I have never seen one like this before, but someone has stuck this washer on here, and I don't even know how they've got it in there because it's the wrong clip, and it looks like I don't know what it is, but it certainly is not a Ducati part. It looks like a spring washer. It looks like a spring washer that someone's bashed in there, and it's definitely not supposed to be like that. And we will have to fix that. It's nearly twice the width of what it should be, and it's going to be a bit of a mission to get off. We're going to have to repair this. We're going to have to repair this spine. Man, that is pretty amazing what these guys have done there. Really backyard stuff. But anyway, it will come off. There you go. It's going.
Strong screwdriver?
Yeah, maybe. But I've got to get a small screwdriver to get it in there. There you go. It's going. Yeah, that's it. You get a bigger one. Like I said, this is. There you go. Man alive. That is fully backyarded.
Fully set.
That's I think that is a spring. Oh yeah, it is. Look, that's a spring washer that someone has ground down. It's been ground down with a disc grinder, and they have. Oh yeah, they believe it or not, they've actually ground this groove here. Does not look like that. It's twice as wide as it should be, and we weld those up and remachine them anyway, so it doesn't matter on this one. But yeah, like I said, you always find something new, and someone's new. I mean, look, that was the best resources they had, so that's what they've done. So we're going to take the Kickstart gears off. This is the Kickstart gear. So this is an interest. This Kickstart gear is running on second gear, which is when you kick it, it drives this gear across to the main shaft, which turns the thing to start it on the Kickstart shaft. But this gear is running all the time. So every minute that bike is running or riding down the road, that gear is spinning and idling and doing nothing. So obviously it uses horsepower and all sorts of bad things, and it doesn't in a lot of engines they don't do that. They make it so this gear is not in mesh all the time. But the engine was designed early 70s, late 60s, and they didn't sort of worry about things like that then. So,
and there's shims.
There's shims. Look, there's shims everywhere. Again, that one has got 2 shims on it, so I don't know what they've done there, but that's correct. That shim there goes on here, that is correct. That circlip is correct, but that is not correct. I don't know what they've done there. Someone's decided they'll put 2 shims on it. They're not even the right size, but look, we see this all the time. It's no big deal. We'll sort it out when we put it back together. So I've taken that off, which will allow us to pull the gearbox out of it. And again, it's not so hard. You basically take the selectors pins out, and then once they're out, we can slide the selector drum out. That's got a shim on it as well. There's shims everywhere, so you need to look for them and put them back on so you know where it was. So selector drum, selectors, we're almost guaranteed. Actually, that one's been replaced for sure. That's actually not bad. I would have expected that to be worn more, but it's for sure been replaced. Those ones are okay. When we put this all back in, I'll go through this in a lot more detail. The gear box will come up. That'll come out easily. And there's quite a few things on this shaft that we're going to look at. And that's our main shaft, which will come in. That shim does live in there, but in fact I don't put them in. That shim is freewheeling, for a better word. So this is a early 6-dog gearbox, which is sort of what this bike would have had originally. Have you got a soft hammer, Chris? Maybe is the one up there. Maybe this will. Yeah, that's good. This output shaft will come out. It just sits in there. Again, there's mods here that we do. This has been typically all glued up with elastic on here because we're going to go again. The reason they've done that is because they had an oil leak, and the reason they had an oil leak is because they used the original lock tab on there, and we don't use the lock tabs, they are a real problem. They cause more problem than what they solve. So there's a mod here that we do, which is something that I used to do, or always do. I've been doing it for, I don't know, 30 years. And that's one of the things that when I went to the factory and talked to them, they said, oh, yeah, well, that's actually on the drawing, but none of the cases got done. So we may as well go into that. So this gear, which is in here, is called, that's a constant mesh gear. So that gear and this little one here is in gear, in mesh, and it's driving in every single gear, first, second, third, not fourth and fifth. So on these engines, fifth is actually an overdrive, which is an overdrive, not top gear. Fourth is top gear, because top gear is always top gear because it's 1-to-1. That's normal. So anything after that, where you're gearing it up, is an overdrive. People don't call fifth an overdrive in this bike, but it is. And arguably that's not a particularly good idea, but that's what they did. Some of the Ducatis even run fifth and sixth, if they're a 6-speed, as overdrive gears, which is even more bizarre, but they do. But on a bevel drive, fifth is overdrive, fourth is direct drive, so that means none of the power is going through any of the gearbox. It's coming out of the engine into the main shaft. The main shaft's connected to the output shaft, which is this one that I'll just put back in. And there's 3 shafts in this gearbox, not 2. It looks like there's 2, but in actual fact, that is classed as a shaft. So that's an output shaft, lay shaft, main shaft, output shaft. So when the output shaft is sitting here, this gear is driving the output shaft, which is connected to the sprocket. So the power in first, second, third, and fifth, the power comes into the main shaft. It goes across to the lay shaft. So it goes, that's first, second, third, fourth direct drive, and then fifth here. So the power comes in here, and in this spline here, it comes in this spline from the primary gears, from the crankshaft. It's driving that shaft. First gear drives across to here. It goes down the shaft to this little gear, which is splined onto there, and then across to the output shaft. So it's going down, 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 across, and then out to the back wheel. Exactly the same with second, third, fourth. It connects the main shaft where the power's coming in. So the power's coming in here in the clutch part, and this gear hooks, those dogs hook onto here, and it connects this shaft, because that's splined, directly to the output shaft. So the power is coming in the shaft, straight down, connected to that spline, through the dogs, straight out the output shaft and to the back wheel. So it's not going through the gearbox at all. And people with sidecars back in the day used to gear the bike so that, well, I did, gear the bike so that fourth gear was the gear that they rode everywhere in. Because if you rode everywhere in fifth, this gear failed abysmally. And they even fail because of that on a normal bike. People gear them up, and these things have got so much torque that people ride them and use that torque, and the torque literally destroys that gear if you're riding them long distances in fifth gear.
And too hot, and
if it's overgeared. If it's overgeared, the thing pulls the gearing. Yeah. The torque is capable of doing it. The gearbox is not capable of taking the load, and eventually it will fail. And man, we see those gears fail right, left, and centre. So getting back to a mod that I mentioned earlier, these 2 gears here are what you call the output gears, and they are used. So first is this gear on the lay shaft. The lay shaft gears are only used if you're in that gear. So first, you're only using this one, or second, or third. Again, fourth is direct drive, so no gears, and fifth is being used on here. So it's only in that gear, and these gears are only getting used momentarily. But this one and this one, every single gear that you're in, except fourth, are driving through that pair of gears. So that pair of gears, the amount of work that's doing is nothing short of horrendous. And other than fourth, it's all driving through that gear, whether it's in first, second, third, or fifth. It's driving through that pair of gears. So when the guys designed it, Taglioni, if you like, he thought, well, this gear doesn't have an oil feed. What are we going to do? We really need to feed that thing oil. And many years ago, and I'm looking at the thing and pulling it apart and going through them and wondering, I looked at this fin. This fin here, you see all these ones, they come up and they join onto the case gasket here.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't do that. And I'm looking at it and going, well, why have they cast a bit of aluminium there and it's not on the other side and it doesn't come up to here? They wouldn't go to the trouble of casting a piece of aluminium there unless there was a reason for it. So what is it? So I thought this thing, I don't know if you can see that, Tony, I can flip that up, So the oil is pumped around the engine. When the oil goes to the rear cylinder head, it has to get back into the sump somehow, same with the front. And they've got drain holes in the head which run down through the barrel, and then it's got to go down through the crankcase and drop into the sump. So that little scallop there and that little scallop there line up with the drain holes in the cylinder head and the barrel, and the oil that's pumped up to the head drains back down through those holes in the barrel. I think we can look at that later, into this area. But instead of running straight out the bottom here, they've gone to the trouble of casting this little groove around here, and they've got a little exit here. So they've got two oil holes feeding this channel, and it's not on the other side, it's only on this side. And they've just got this little slot here for the oil to get out, which would come down and goes onto the crankshaft and gets flung everywhere. And I thought, well, that's a bit strange. Why have they gone to the trouble of casting that in there? Why have they gone to the trouble of making this little gap here? And what's the point of it? And then I looked at this, and what this is that is the oil feed to these two gears. So the engine is sitting like this in the box, and the oil is draining down from the two drain holes into this and into here, and it runs around this channel. Some of it goes out here, like I said, and in this case, 100% of it goes out through there, and that's it, end of story. But if what made me twig to it was this fin being here, and I thought, well, if I drilled a hole here, if I drilled a little hole in here like that, it doesn't really matter how big, it can be 1/8 or it can be 10 mil or 3/8 or whatever. So I drill a hole in there, and it comes out on this side. It comes out under here on that side of that fin. When the engine is sitting on the road and going down the road, the oil would run. It would not only run out there, but it would run through that hole. It would run down this fin, and it would drop straight on to the output gears, which would give them oil feed all the time, constantly, because they are working in every gear except fourth. So they designed that, and they cast that fin in place, not on the other side. It's there for a reason, and it's there to feed that oil. But to drill that hole in the factory, I drill it. You can drill it with a pistol drill. You can set it up with a mill or whatever. But I drill it with a pistol drill because it's easy to do that, and as long as the hole's through there and feeding the oil, that is all that matters. So, but in a factory where they're manufacturing a set of cases like this, and they're machining holes, to drill holes like this is easy. Like, it's a walk in the park. The machine will do it easily. That hole is what they call a compound angle, which means it is on an angle this way and it is on an angle that way. So it's a compound angle. Anyone that knows about engineering will know what that means, but you can understand it's an angle that has two dimensions of the actual angle. That it has 2 degrees. On the drawing, it'll be an angle this way and an angle not. So that would be straight and that would be the angle. This would be parallel on that plane and that would be an angle. So to set a machine up or to make a jig to put that in and drill that one hole would be quite a cost, like a lot of dicking around. So whoever decided to set it up in their machine, and round cases are the same, it would have been quite a mission to do that, and it would have added a bit of cost to the making of it. And I don't know, someone said, no, don't worry about that. We won't worry about it. There's plenty of oil at the bottom. It's going to get oil anyway. And look, they do get oil, but that does make those gears last a lot longer. So the factory made that decision, and not one that came out of the factory, except the guys like NCR, Napoleon Karachi, who were building race bikes, and they were really entrenched in endurance racing. So, of course, they drilled all theirs. Well, they actually had an oil feed into the lay shaft. We'll talk about that later. But they drilled theirs. At the time I did this, I hadn't seen that. But I was drilling mine, and then when I went to the factory at that particular visit, and I was asking them about drawings. Obviously, Taglioni was pretty old, and but he was really helpful. And I told him about this, and I told him about a few other things, and he said we had another guy there who could translate, and he said, "Oh, come and have a look at this." So he went over the bloody thing, he pulled out the drawings, put them on the desk, and he didn't really explain them or anything. He just pointed with his finger, and there's the hole drilled on the drawing, and the other mods that I'd done are there on the gears and whatever. And yeah, I mean, it was quite amazing. Really. I was impressed.
He's basically saying, "Don't call me a dumbass."
He said, "Don't call me a dumbass, you bloody Kiwi bastard.
Yeah.
We're smarter than you. Don't tell me to suck eggs." So he laughed. He thought it was, he was, I don't know what he was, but he was.
Don't talk to me about engines. I know engines.
That's right. That's right. And for good reason. I mean, the guy was pretty smart. There's no doubt about that. So anyway, so that's the oil feed. That's the oil feed mod that we do.
Okay.
These gears. This gearbox is, well, bloody hell. This one has been chopped up. So here's a classic. This is an early 6-dog gearbox, and they've got the reason that 6 dogs because it's got 6 dogs, and if you look at it, it's got high dogs and it's got low dogs. They put the low dogs on so that when it's driving on this gear, and you turn the throttle off, instead of having a big gap between there and there, and when you turn the throttle off, the bike will have a big free runs, and it feels a bit strange. It's got a big snatch in it in the chain because of that gap. So they put this on, and that's a backlash dog, so that when you turn the throttle off, instead of the gear having to travel from this one back to that one, it hits that one and stops that free. That's what it's for.
Yeah, like the big shuttle.
Like the big shuttle. That is what that low dog is for on all of these gears. That's how it's designed. That's what it's designed to do. On the 3-dog gears, they got rid of, obviously, the backlash dogs, and they made these ones longer.
Oh, okay.
And they made these ones longer, and that obviously fixed the problem. And I haven't even talked about the problem as such, but the problem is that if you put the bike into gear and it happens to go in, so that there is gone into gear there, and the high dog and the high dog are matched, and it's going to take off, like it's going to drive. If you happen to put it in there, it will still drive. It'll still drive while this is in good condition, but it's only driving on a dog that's half the width of that. So eventually this wears and this wears, and that gets a radius on this, low dog, and you put it into gear, and you take off, and people come and say, oh, sometimes when I take off, it jumps out of first gear. Sometimes it doesn't. Well, that's, again, very, very common. And the reason it's doing it is because that has worn a radius on there, and you put it in, and it goes boom and fires itself out, and by the time it gets around to here, it's already out, and then it goes and it misses that dog, and it just gets worse from there on in. And the only way to fix it is to split it and put new first gear dogs in it. So the 3-dog ones don't do that because it doesn't have the opportunity to hit on the low one, because there ain't no low one, and they don't suffer from that problem. On my race bikes, there is a downside. There's a downside to the 3-dog gearbox, and this has it to some degree, but not as bad. And that is that because that dog is wider, and this dog is wider, when you first go to put it in, and more so when you're going like first, when you put it into first, that's one scenario. But when you're going from first to second, second to third, third to fourth, if you've got wide dogs, the gear, so for it to change gear, this is missing. When you put it into gear, clunk, it goes in, and the dogs line up. If the two dogs hit each other like that, you've got to wait for it to go around and line up and drop in. That is when it changes gear. And a 3-dog gearbox definitely does not change as good as a 6-dog gearbox when it's new, because this has got more opportunity to go in than a 3-dog one, because the dogs are wider, so you've got to wait for them to line up for them to go in. Okay. Now, on the race bike, all my race bikes, we don't use a 3-dog gearbox as such. We actually use, well, I used to use a 6-dog gearbox, and this one has actually been done. If you look at that, you'll see that this was a 6-dog gear, and someone has ground off. That did look like exactly like that. It had low dogs and high dogs. Someone's ground off the low dogs because they would have been jumping out of gear, and to fix it, they've ground them off, and now it doesn't have those, so it's not going to drive on them, and it's only driving on those. By doing that, you create a heap of space that it can go where it can change gear. And when you're racing and the gears, and you're not when you put into gear on the line, but when you go from first, second, third, fourth, and etc., and when you change back the other way, you've got like the amount of time that the dogs are lined up where they won't go in, and the amount of time where the dogs aren't lined up and they will go in is maximised, and so it will change gear miles quicker. Like, it's unbelievable. If you ride a 6-dog gearbox that's had all the dogs taken off it, you would not believe how much faster it changes gear. The only downside is that if you're using a road bike, every time you turn the throttle off, it has this big free run where it has a big snatchy bit. So most people don't need it and don't want it and don't do it. But on a race bike, that's not the case. You're on the gas or you're on the brakes. There's nothing in between. So that snatchy bit don't matter. So the 3-dog gearbox is, I've got one here to show you. The 3-dog gearbox is definitely better. So there's a 6-dog gear, and you can see it's got the 6 high dogs, and then there's a 3-dog, which is what they made, and it's got a wider dog. So it doesn't have the one that gives the trouble, the low one, and the backlash. The one that mates to that is also 3-dog, and it's also long, so it's also a long dog. So you don't get that snatch, and you don't get the problem of the thing half engaging on a low dog. So, for the road guys and for really 100% of use in engine rebuilds and people on the road, obviously we opt for a 3-dog gearbox, and we pretty well ditch these because they give trouble. So that, I guess, is the long and the short of why they changed the from the 6-dog to the 3-dog, and the factory did change. The first gear situation was a real issue because when you're stationary, you never knew whether you were going to get the low one or the high one, and it gave so much trouble that the factory did a mod, and they made a 3-dog first gear. So all the later engines, even the 6-dog ones, had a 3-dog first. So that because they were giving so much trouble, and if you looked up that part number, it came like that, and this dog came with 3 dogs on it as well. So they did actually change first gear and not the rest of them, because that's the one that gave most of the trouble. I mean, this one here gave a lot of trouble on the gear changes on the crop ones with the crossovers, like the 860s and the 76 SSs. They had the crossover gear change mechanism, and that mechanism was below average, and it used to give a lot of problem half changing gears, and that used to blow gearboxes up because of the 6-dog thing. And not just first, it used to do 3rd and 4th and all the rest of it. So the 75s didn't do it because they had the gear change on the other side, and they didn't have all that slop and the stuff in the drive. So how are we going for time, Tony? We're
half an hour.
We're half an hour. So I want to do one other thing here with the problem that this is another one that my old mate Tags buddy pointed out he'd already fixed. So this is 5th gear on the lay shaft, and again this is a 6-dog gear. And if you look carefully at it, where the teeth are cut, the dogs themselves, there is a classic case. So this tooth is cut straight through the dog, and it's got metal either side of that tooth, and that's fine, no problem. This one, the tooth is cut and the gear is complete. That part of the dog is gone. That's fine, no problem. That one is on the backlash side, so it doesn't really matter. But see that little tiny bit there is if that was on the other side if that was on the drive side, that would be a problem, and you'll see why in a minute. So where was I up to? So this one, those two there are quite thick. They're okay. This one is completely gone, no problem. That one is quite thin, but it's on the backlash side, so it's not driving. This one is the same thickness as that one, and look what it's done. It's chipped the dog off because it was very, very thin. And if you look here, it's actually taken a bit of the tooth away, and that one's not bad. But often when that chips off, it takes a great slither of the tooth off, and it's because the depth of the tooth and the height of the dog is like it just leaves a feather edge that it's driving on, and they just don't have the strength, and they literally, there's another one, that one. So there you go, see that, there's another one that's broken off, and that has taken the tooth away. So this is the one we've gone round, so this one's thick, so that hasn't done it, but there you go, there's that one. It was very thin. That one would have looked like that other one that's on there you go, there's one on, there's a very thin one, but that hasn't failed because it's on that one was on the, that's on the backlash side. That one is on the drive side. It's chipped it out. So when we started making gearboxes, we think, well, that's no good. We need to do something about that. So what we did was we turned the dog down to, and it is a narrower dog, which people would say, oh, well, the dog's not going to be strong enough, it's not really thick enough. But the reality is that this one may look wide here. It may look wide here where the dog is, but this bit here where it makes it really thin, it's only driving on a width of the dog that size anyway, because the dog, the structural part of the dog is from the root of the tooth down to the inside diamond of the dog. This bit that's sticking up here is not doing anything. The only thing it's doing is creating a weak spot, chipping off, going through the rest of the engine and ending up in the oil pump, which is what happens, and literally causing the engine to fail. So we decided that it wouldn't, chopping that whole thing off like that and turning that down until that bit was gone completely. So it can't chip off is the way to go. And this is the same. The three dog ones do the same. If they've got a slither where the root is, it will chip the tooth. It'll chip the dog off and take the tooth out with it. So we've been doing that, I don't know how many, well, since day one, since we started making these gearboxes, like best part of 40 years ago. So when I went, this was another thing that I explained to him and said, this is what we do, thinking that he's going to go, oh, you're bloody crazy, you know, the gearbox will blow apart. And he, again, pulled the drawing out, and sure enough, the drawing from that he designed was exactly the same as that. So it wasn't my idea, it was his idea, but I didn't know that. So, and I mean, all the late model Ducatis, they're all like that. They don't have that bit of slither up there. So if you buy a Vee Two gearbox, you're getting, that's what you're getting. And if you had an original gearbox, you could actually grind those bits off. And if someone brings me one and they happen to have a new gear like that, that's what I do. I say, look, well, that'll be right, it'll be fine. We'll just grind that bit off, and it won't fail, and it'll be like it should have been from the factory anyway. So it's not like, you know, it's you can fix an original one as long as it hasn't chipped and done any damage, especially if it's brand new. And I don't know, I thought maybe this one had been replaced, maybe it has, I don't know. But my gut feeling is, in fact it has, this gear has been replaced. That is not that old, and the reason I know that is because I've put some green marks on there to show you. But if you look here, it's got a bit of blue on it, and that, I don't know what it means, but new factory gears, they mark them often with a bit of blue paint, and whether they're selecting them or making them, checking them or whatever, and the blue's okay, I don't know. But it's not uncommon to see a bit of blue paint on a late model bevel-drive gear back in the day, but they never had that on them when they were fitted new in the engine the first time it was built. It wasn't like that. So someone has put a new gear in there and it still failed because of that taper with the teeth. So I don't know if you want to go on any more or save it for the next issue. I know that's a lot to take in and a lot to, maybe I'll explain it a bit long, but there you go. That's how it is. What do you think? You want to go on? You want to wait for that?
No, that's fine. I mean, we've got the Kickstart shaft. We can do that later.
Yeah.
No, that's a good description of...
I mean, these are things that really cause problem in your engine from day one, unless it's addressed, and, you know, it's possible it has been addressed. But if it's not addressed, it certainly needs to be the next time you rebuild it, 100%. And I mean, it's not hard to do. It's nothing. There's nothing special. It's just basically what I would call engineering common sense, and it should have been done in the first place. And there you go. We'll
look at when we're rebuilding the engine, when it's going back together. We'll probably use one of our complete gearboxes.
We will, yeah.
And the three dog. But so that's it for this episode. Hope you've got something out of it. Like and subscribe, please. And also, we're doing this the day after a video's just gone up of the previous episode of the engine. So we're aiming to do it every 2 weeks. Well, we will be doing it every 2 weeks. But what we're going to also do, like I've already been and picked up the frame and swing arm and whatnot from the powder coaters. It looks fantastic. So in between, in the off week, we're going to try and get up another video of where we're out with the rest of the bike, and it'll be probably shorter. So look out for that. So hopefully, definitely every 2 weeks, hopefully every week with a shorter video in the off week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Catch you later. Bye.
Okay, bye.